Welcome to iFuxxsAnime, where we talk about anime that we fuck with. I'm Skylar V Smith, and this is
Michael Healy.
and the anime that you fuck with is
Dragon Ball.
Start the montage.
I will grant you 3 wishes. Speak that I may return to my slumber.
Vegeta! What does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 8,000! It's Frieza! No, Frieza! Don't do it! Goku! Well... So, Kakarot, how does it feel to be put in your place? It's not the first time I've been in a tough spot. Stings the pride, doesn't it? I want you to come at me with all you've got.
Here I go! You never said you were gonna hit back.
I never said I wouldn't.
Dragon Ball, a classic anime with many variations of
Many
it.
parts, many parts.
Yes. What part of the Dragon Ball universe would you like to focus on?
Dragon Ball Z, because that's the one that I first got into, watched as a kid growing up. I grew up in Australia. And that was the one that was on morning cartoon shows. So this is before the age of streaming and DVDs and all that sort of thing. And home video and all that did exist, but only bits and pieces trickled to Australia, and sort of, the few cartoons that were on, or anime that were on the morning cartoon show, that's what you got. So
Nice. What kind of morning cartoon show, like network, did Dragon Ball Z play?
oh, from memory, it was on the Channel 10 network in Australia.
Gotcha.
So there's one government network in Australia and 3 commercial broadcasters. So we had four channels in Australia growing up. Cable was very rare and didn't exist in much of the country until well into the 90s. And on the Channel 10 show, I think it was called a program called Cheese TV, that aired from 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning or something like that. And they would just do a bunch of different cartoons, different animes. They did, that's where I got into Pokemon as well. They showed that. But Dragon Ball Z was the one that I really fell in love with. And often, depending on when I had to go to school and all that, I would record it on a VCR tape. This package, program the VCR tape and program the time. And, if broadcast was early or late, sometimes your tape recording would cut out too early or start too early. And so get home from school and be all excited to go to the VCR, hit the rewind and go come on, did we get it? Did we get it? And sit down and watch the show.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who did something like that. Yes, I used to have my VCR on a timer for it, and so I can come back and watch it. I think at that time it was a Cartoon Network with that show, and it was during its Toonami lineup at 5 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah. And you probably had the similar thing where I don't know if the daylight savings happened or the schedule shifted and you didn't change the clock on the VCR because the clock never didn't sync to the internet or anything. You have to manually program that clock. And if you didn't change it right, or something happened, you'd come home the next day or wake up the next morning oh, let's watch my shows, and you put it in. It's recorded, the cooking show.
Yes, this is how you knew early on if you were going to be able to adapt to technology well, if you could change the time in the VCR.
Yes,
because that was not a simple task.
You had to sync it up to the clocks and all that, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, that was how I got into Dragon Ball Z. It was the one that I fell in love with as a kid, and in junior school and high school, and I think there's 300 something. There's hundreds of episodes of not just Dragon Ball Z, but there's Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, Super. There's hundreds and hundreds of episodes. So when you only watch one a day, instead of binging and streaming like we can now, that's many years of your life that you'll be watching a show.
Yes.
Every day just get one episode. So yeah, there was for years that I was watching Dragon Ball Z.
What kept you into it? Because there's hundreds of episodes.
Yeah.
What made you keep coming back?
At the time, I don't think I really like thought about it and as much, but it was just an exciting show. And then like looking back at it now, I think it's just like the characters and that the characters, like there are so many episodes and yet the characters have plot arcs, but not necessarily like strong character arcs, which is good because like Goku's going to always act like Goku. Vegeta's always going to act like Vegeta, even though Vegeta turns from a villainous character to like part of the core team of heroes.
Yes.
But he's like his core, like always wanting to be better than Goku and
his Saiyan pride.
His pride, all that. That's consistent the whole way through. So I think when you have like such strong characters like that, it just carries you through. And when I was younger, like growing up and watching it, it's the idea of like identify with Goku, just like the never give up. Yeah, that was a real strong thing for me. That he was always fighting for his friends. Always didn't matter how bad the world was and what was going on and how strong the villain is. He'd always like want to keep fighting.
Do you find that like reflects your personality?
Yeah, it's life will throw lots of things at you, and it's not about like as they say in Rocky, not about how hard you get hit, but how hard you can take the hits and then get up and keep on getting hit and keep on pushing through. And I think that's what kept me through and identify the most with Goku is like, no, I knew he was always gonna like fight for his friends, fight for his family, fight for his world.
In being positive and in like being optimistic about whatever situation that you're in. I think that's the other part of like Rocky that they don't talk about.
Yeah.
Right? Like I once heard this rapper named Russ say he was being interviewed by Joe Budden, and Joe Budden asked him, like, how'd you do it? He said, I was patient, but I was positive while being patient.
Right.
And I was like, that's such a key part of things. And so like even in Rocky, it's like, hey, yes, getting back up, right? But life's always going to throw something at you. And if you're still here, that means that you got back up. But I think what separates people is being positive while they get back up. And that's something that Goku kept doing. And is the bit that I know about you is that seems to be your personality.
Yeah, and I think there's another part of like Goku I identify with is like he's a grown ass man, but he's he's childlike without being childish. And he's got that sense of wonder in the world, and things are still like, oh my god, this is a bowl of food, like amazing, and like there's that joy he has.
Right, of that childlike mind, and as you're saying, like celebrating the small things. Like it's like there isn't small things to him. Everything's big
and wonderful and amazing, and it goes to that.
Right.
I think the other part that just popped in my head is that grew up in Australia. Australia, has toxic masculinity is a loaded word, but a very like in the time I grew up in the 90s, very boys don't cry kind of mentality, and boys don't show emotion, all that, and seeing a character about like channel rage, I think was like really cathartic as a kid growing up, and seeing that like, oh, there can be outlets for rage and anger, when you're fighting evil.
Whereas Vegeta's down there the opposite of that, right? He is very much so like this machismo character and macho and stuff. And it isn't until much, much later in the series where he starts to soften up a bit when he becomes a family man, where his Saiyan pride isn't the thing that's number one to him, versus for the majority of the seasons, his Saiyan pride is the thing that's most important to him.
Yeah, and I think there's the contrast between Goku and Vegeta that like both have the anger, the rage, the fight, but like when it's coming from the place of pride versus like the selflessness, you see the different outcomes.
Something just popped in my head. Do you think they're going opposite direction? I know we're focusing on Z, but as family becomes more and more important to Vegeta.
Oh, okay.
Fighting is becoming more and more important to Goku, and less about family and how he's constantly putting others at risk for a good fight.
Well, so to circle back to watched it every day as cartoons growing up, to my eternal shock and disappointment and outrage, in Australia they stopped airing Dragon Ball Z after the conclusion of the Cell saga. So I've read what happens in the Majin Buu saga. I've seen like clips of it and all that, and I'm actually finally now like started like watching the episodes in that. But I've read what happens, and then spoiler alert, but like at the end of the Majin Buu saga, Goku like basically walks off into the sunset with the reincarnation of Majin Buu, but as a good person, and be like, I'm gonna go off and train you, and everyone's like, wait, what? You're leaving us?
Right, and he only trains him so he can fight him later.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, he leaves his family to train a person. He grooms a fighter.
Yeah,
like that is oh my god.
Yeah, and so like it's kind of, I don't know, like this Dragon Ball I think was created in 1986, which year I was born, so maybe that's part of it as well. But when you're creating something over many years, hundreds of episodes. And I think I can't remember when the original creator passed away, but I think he got to finish Z, and then GT and Super he was like not all the way there in. But
right, because GT was done by somebody completely. I think it was his son or something like that.
Yeah,
and GT's the one that I don't even think they have it as canon anymore.
Yeah, no, it was sort of like, oh, we don't like that as much. But the idea of like, Goku, I guess when Dragon Ball started, he's this like, Dragon Ball before Dragon Ball Z, he's this like super like naive kid and I just want to fight and be the best and be the best. And then that sort of, into Dragon Ball Z is where he's more fleshed out. He's got the family, he's got his son who trains up his son and all of that. But yeah, he does become this more like, oh, I just want to train, I just want to keep fighting.
Right. So, before we get too far ahead, because we definitely want to dive deeper in that, would you say, is Goku your favorite character?
Now, in the wider Dragon Ball universe, there's a character called Beerus, which is probably my favorite character now.
Okay.
But Goku was my favorite character, like watching it growing up, for sure. And I think it's like, but yeah, as I've grown with it and thought more about it, like I appreciate other characters that have like Vegeta that have more of an arc of like villain to hero, more of a family man. He's going, like I said, the opposite.
Right. I mean, I know this gets a little bit farther ahead, but when we even look at Super, it's how we they meet those sayings from a different universe, and that one saying that he takes under his wing a bit and he sees so much of himself in him. And it's like, Goku's not doing that for anybody.
Yeah.
Who's your in the Dragon Ball Z world? Who's your favorite character? I'm sorry, favorite villain.
Oh, favorite villain. I think I was scared the most by Frieza as a kid.
He's a great villain.
Yeah.
And then again, too, he's way more complex than we think he is, and especially the more we know about him, the more it's like. He's a character that you love to hate. Yeah.
And as you learn a bit about him, he's trying to live up to his father's legacy, and his dad created an empire this big, so Frieza has to create an empire this big, kind of thing. And that's an easy one to like. Good villains are ones where you go like, oh, that could be me if my life was different. But that's the thing, and that's also because that's a thing that motivates. And I feel that we all feel the pressure of our parents and their expectations in our lives, and that's something that I identify with a lot. It's like, oh, that could be me.
When we see his final form, because when he goes to when he starts to transform and stuff, and then one becoming more scarier than the other when they're on Namek, and then the final form is such this unassuming form, and so damn powerful. In just what they were saying with that is like, hey, this is not the size or anything like that. Like this man right here, like this final form is actually his scariest form.
Yeah, I think that was something like I remember being like super cool. It's like, oh, like they've got the upper hand, and he's like, no, I've been playing you all along. I can evolve and turn into a different form, a stronger form. And he goes from this tiny little person in a floating chair to this big ass form, and then the last form is like just this sleek white and purple kind of. chilling like kind of warrior. That was probably spoiler alert again, but he turns his final form when he's fighting Goku, and he kills Goku's best friend Krillin
brutally,
and that was like one of those moments, like people that watched Game of Thrones and saw the end of the first season where you have a major character get killed. Like that was probably like the first time I saw like a major character get killed in a show, and I was like, that was just shocking to me because I've been watching Krillin for 100 episodes by that point, and then see him just get it's like I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't gonna because every fight up until that point, they get knocked down, they get back up. Goku gets killed earlier on, but you see him go to heaven straight away, and then he's training with King Kai, who's like a deity figure in the Dragon Ball Z universe. And when Krillin died, it was shocking.
And there was like no build up to it.
No.
Also, it was like Frieza just saw him in the background. It then toyed with him a bit before he killed them. And so
it was shocking.
Right. And I love that line too that Goku says, we've already wished him back once. That means we can't wish him back again.
Yeah.
And so they let us really breathe with it. They can remind us that, hey, no, he can't come back.
He's gone.
Right?
He's gone.
Even though he does. But but in that moment, we thinking that he actually can't, because it's like, okay, character dies, it doesn't really impact that much because, hey, you can wish him back. But again, since we're thinking he can't be wished back since it's already happened, it does really hit us. And then it leads into, that is the catalyst to one of the biggest developments that happened in Dragon Ball when it came to Super Saiyan, us finally seeing it. So for me, because at this time I was in high school, we already knew that the Super Saiyan form happened. It's like I didn't know Krillin got killed, but we had seen things online. I remember being in computer science class or whatever, and we were printing out pictures of Super Saiyans and what they look like, and it taking 5 minutes for the damn thing to come out. What about for you? Did you already know that they turn into Super Saiyans?
No, it was like complete surprise and shocking, and it was like such an all is lost moment. So the lead up to when the people talk Dragon Ball, they talk about the sagas in terms of who the main villain is at the time. So Dragon Ball kind of follows. There's the Saiyans, starts off with the Saiyan saga, which is when the Vegeta and who's his henchman he comes with?
Nappa.
Vegeta and Nappa invade Earth.
Right. Raditz comes first. Goku's brother.
Yep. And then there's the Frieza saga, the Cell saga, and it finishes with the Majin Buu saga. But up until then talked about like Super Saiyan and Saiyan powers and all that sort of stuff. But up until the Frieza saga, they'd been like fighting on Earth, and it still felt kind of grounded,
Right.
Then they go to this other planet to try and find these other Dragon Balls to wish characters back to life, and it's so desolate and alien looking. And one thing I really love about Dragon Ball Z is so much of it's like hand drawn. Like it's beautiful to watch today, and I think there's something you lose when you go full CG animation. There's something about it. It seems more like, especially on that planet, more ethereal when it's all like hand drawn animation and all that. When Krillin dies, and that pushes Goku over the limit, over the edge of grief and anger and rage and pain, and he goes, Super Saiyan.
Yeah. That moment, and man, the way that transformation went and how beautiful everything was, Yeah. That was
so cool. So cool. And it's like, to this day, it's like one of my, it's just one of the coolest looking, designed, like sort of hero transformations. And, you've been to my place and I've got like a giant mural in my garage of what it looks like. I just think it's like one of the coolest looks ever. And I think that as a kid watching that, showing that like, there are many appropriate responses to grief and pain, and that like you can be angry that someone died that's a real thing.
Right.
which I think I found quite cathartic. The school I went to was a very tight-knit, close community, and I remember by the time I'd finished high school, I'd done 12 years of school and had been to 13 funerals.
Damn.
Because when someone's grandmother died or whatever, the school would come together and the funeral would be held at the school chapel and we'd all be expected to attend and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that was like, yeah, a very cathartic thing. It's like, oh, like there are, you know, this is stuff I realize now as an adult, but as a kid, you don't really process that the same way. But just going like, oh, I'm here in this chapel and everyone's crying and like, but I don't feel like crying. Like, is my emotional response wrong? And then I get to watch a show where it's like someone dies and like, oh no, they can be angry about that. There can be different responses to the same event.
Something made me think about it is when he defeats Frieza, how he shows Frieza mercy. It's how you can still like showing forgiveness for someone who scarred you, who's someone who took something from you. You know, I thought that was also just a great thing to put in an anime like that, where of course it's I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's any way of them knowing what their primary audience was going to be, but it resonated with so many different people around the world, different different cultures. Something they want to talk with you about. Why do you think Dragon Ball Z resonated so well with so many different cultures around the world?
Yeah, that's a big one because it's like one of the top, most popular animes of all time. We're talking about it, 30 years plus after it first got created here.
Right. So you're down watching it in Australia at the same time I'm watching it here in America, in Oakland. They're like very, very different parts of the world, very different cultures, but yet we were both drawn to this.
I'd be fascinated to dive into it, but I think a part of it is just to do with the characters and things like you just mentioned when Goku defeated Frieza, showing him mercy, and that it's almost like the moral education of that, of like, if I'm a shitty person to you, you don't let that change your character. Only you get to decide what your character is.
Right. And if you let it change that character, you're letting your enemy win more.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
If you turn to evil because I've been bad to you, then I've defeated you, even though I might die.
Right. And I will continue to defeat you.
Yeah.
Something that I talk about in the film industry oftentimes is, that I had to learn, is the more you climb in this industry, the higher you climb, eventually you're going to come across somebody who's going to fuck you over. Yeah. I think it's the same in business and many other different aspects in life, right? Now, if you continue to climb, there's a good chance that person may continue to climb as well.
Yeah.
And where you may have to do business with them again. And it could be a good deal, right? But if you let your emotions get in the way, you will continue to let that person fuck you over and not recognize the gift that they gave you, which is they told you how they valued you depending on the number they messed you over at, or the type of way, and who they are. So they did you a favor. And, and it's much better to get somebody to screw you over at one level than at a much higher level.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they taught you some lessons. And so, yes. Another thing I wanted to talk about a bit when it just came to why Dragon Ball Z resonates so well
so popular,
right, in different cultures, is there's another piece of entertainment out there, comic book and cartoons and movies that's out there that resonates very well with a lot of different cultures. Now, we all know it's obvious that Dragon Ball is heavily inspired by Journey to the West.
Yeah.
Right? But in Dragon Ball Z, they move away from that. Mm-hmm. No one really talks about what Z is inspired by. There is something that I feel it is inspired by heavily.
Yeah.
X-Men.
Oh.
And especially if we look at the Saiyan saga, mm-hmm. and how they train for when Nappa and Vegeta's coming, and we look at remember they were called the Z-Force.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we look at the different characters that surround them. And when we look at Kami's such a Professor X-esque character.
Yeah.
Right? And what led me down this path is this. I was watching this video on YouTube and it said how Vegeta changed anime forever. Because ever since Dragon Ball Z, we start getting the Vegeta-esque kind of character. We see it in Naruto, we see it in Bleach, in many others. Whereas like you have the main character, and then you have this other character that's almost like the opposite of them, but somehow they're on the same squad. And it's a character that's reluctant to be part of the team at first.
Yeah.
And it's never fully a part of the team, but they are there. Right? And oftentimes it's my favorite character. Like Vegeta's my favorite character, right? And they're oftentimes the character with the biggest arc. And then I realized Vegeta's so much like Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I was like,
oh my God, yeah.
Right? And then I couldn't let it escape me. I was like, oh shit, I should start seeing it more and more. And I was like, no, I think Vegeta's heavily inspired by Wolverine.
By Wolverine the X-Men,
right?
Yeah.
When we look at the hair, being orphans, being a person who's reluctant to be a part of the team that eventually is on the team, but never quite, is always on, like skirts the outside of that.
And then where they came from, they were created as a weapon, but that they don't want to, they end up being more than that.
Right, and the fact that they were created for a weapon is their internal pain that they can never escape.
Yeah.
Like when Frieza kills, when Frieza kills Vegeta.
Yeah.
And as he's dying, and he makes Goku promise to kill him, and he says what he did to me as a child. He's like how it was never enough. How he made me kill these people. Like he made me into the person I am today. And then we look at like Wolverine as Weapon X, how they made him into who he is at the present day, and how internally he's always fighting against that. It blew my mind that I never saw that.
That's a crazy. It makes so much sense now you're talking about it. Yeah.
Right. And even like the things that calm them down is love, you know. Wolverine's a bit different because he loves Jean Grey, but Jean Grey's already taken for it, right?
Yeah.
And Vegeta, he falls in love with Bulma. And right, if we even think about like when he falls in love with Bulma, it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a thing, and that shocks everyone. Because you would think like these are two people that would never get together.
Yeah. Don't we find out about it because they finish the Frieza saga, Frieza Fear, they come back to Earth. And they think before the next major saga, the Cell saga starts, Frieza's henchmen basically like glue his body back together with a bit of duct tape and metal stitches, and Frieza comes to Earth. And you're like, oh no, like Frieza's back, and like who's gonna defend Earth and whatever. And this mysterious Saiyan pops out of nowhere who's got blue hair that looks a lot like Bulma's hair, and he chops Frieza in half with a sword and defeats him just like that.
Like a fusion pink, right? Because his hair doesn't go blue until...
No, I'm talking about Trunks.
Oh, Trunks. Yeah, no, I'm saying Trunks. Like Trunks' hair is pink at first.
Is it pink? It's a pinky...
Yeah. I know later there's another...
It becomes more blue later, does it? Like,
yeah.
It starts off pink.
Yeah, like pink because it's not quite pink, but it's like a fusion kind of pink. But
it's very similar to Bulma's hair. Like it's
right.
You can see the crossover. And I think is that the first thing we go like, hey, where we have to piece back together like, oh, Vegeta and Bulma get together? It's like,
but even before that, like because remember we don't know that he's a Saiyan forever until he turns Super Saiyan.
Yeah.
And because his hair isn't like typical Saiyans, it's laid down.
Yeah, it's cut.
Right. And when he and Vegeta's there looking at him because they're like, yo, who the fuck is this? And then when he turns Super Saiyan, it's like that just like, and Vegeta like gets enraged and jealous because wait, there's another one?
Yeah.
Right?
And I haven't achieved this?
Exactly. And Bulma's there holding baby Trunks.
Oh, okay. So, but we the audience, do we the audience know baby Trunks is...
No,
we don't know Vegeta's his dad, baby Trunks' dad at that point?
Do we? I don't remember. I know. Shortly before or after they do say it, and everyone was shocked. I know it does happen around those episodes.
Yeah. But I remember like just being like shocked by that.
Yeah.
By like, oh wait, what? That's not just because there's that character baby comes back from the future, but being like, whoa, Vegeta has found more to life than just fighting, and he's had a relationship with someone.
Because we know that we find out that it's future Trunks before Vegeta does,
Right.
and the rest of them does, right? And I think yes, that's the way that we find out that Bulma and Vegeta got together because of baby Trunks is there, and they introduced them to everyone, and so around this time too, again, this is really when Vegeta starts to look like Wolverine a bit, because remember, Vegeta was very slim at first, and then and short, but then he becomes stocky and short, like buff, and then again, that's when you just can't unsee it, because originally the Wolverine design was like 5'4" or something like that.
He's very small,
right, and just really like jacked until Hugh Jackman kind of changed all of that, and so
I mean Hugh Jackman's 6'2" or something, so he's
right. And I remember for years I was like, I want a comic book accurate Wolverine. Until Deadpool Wolverine, when they showed comic book accurate Wolverine, I was like, actually, I can see, I get it.
I can see that.
Yeah, bouncing around a bit. But one of the things I always appreciated about Dragon Ball Z is very easy to pronounce a lot of those names.
Yeah.
So, as a person who loves anime.
Yeah. And the way he went around naming it's all just after vegetables.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Vegeta's like a brand of vegetable stock. There's a character like Kakarot, carrot. Kakarot is Goku's Saiyan name. His brother is basically a radish. Nappa is they're all puns on vegetables and names like that. There's another Saiyan later on called broccoli.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And then it's funny when I look at the planet Namek, when I look at these trees, I'll just see broccoli.
Yeah.
And so
no, it was like very like the creator has a wicked sense of humor, and then famously the character Frieza. So he created this during the 80s, and during the 80s in Japan, massive property boom, and then the Japanese bubble burst at the end of the 80s and all that. But property boom, you get real estate agents. Frieza is based on like a ruthless real estate agent he knew, apparently.
That's funny. Like, what a great way to get back at somebody, like a huge fuck you, like
like that's what he saw real estate, property developers and real estate agents as just like, creating these like empires of nothing.
Yeah. And then if you just think about it too, like him conquering all these planets and stuff to do nothing with, and install his own government. I also thought about a little bit too in how you say his name? Burris?
Beerus,
yes. What did you think about when it was revealed that he was the one who gave the order for Frieza to destroy Planet Vegeta?
Yeah. I think like the Dragon Ball universe has so many permutations and episodes, and I think the strongest part was Dragon Ball Z, the strongest storytelling, because you have these real character arcs up until like the end of the Cell. Like I said, I haven't watched the full Majin Buu saga, read about it, but the end of the Cell saga concludes with, Goku actually dying, deciding to stay into heaven. Gohan, the sun, surpasses the faster. Gohan achieves Super Saiyan level 2, and Earth is safe and all is good. And then the thing was so popular, they wanted to create more. So when we get to the series after that, Dragon Ball Super, you run into the problem you run into in this is essentially a fantasy world. Fantasy where it's like you're a god, I'm a god, and like who can punch stronger, right? Like once we're consuming the powers of the universe, it's just about like I can punch stronger. No, I can punch stronger, and when you level up and get stronger and stronger, there's some limit of ceiling, and it's like, okay, well, how does that, and how do you deal with that on a storytelling level? And so when we get to far past Dragon Ball Z and we're into Dragon Ball Super, we start meeting all the gods of this universe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Beerus is the god of destruction. And I think it kind of cheapens it a little when turns around and say that, he was the one that ordered it, because retconning is like a thing I kind of really hate. Because I went through the emotional arc and pain of watching Dragon Ball Z and those characters there. And then to find out years later, like, oh no, like it wasn't them, it was me. Kind of like, it's a storytelling mechanism that I really don't like. I think it's kind of lazy storytelling, and it kind of makes me feel like, oh, like I was cheated in that experience because I was lied to in that thing I saw in Dragon Ball Z.
Right. And especially too, if you're just gonna tease it.
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't know where they're gonna go with it yet. Mm-hmm. But I felt the same way. I was like, Frieza's jealousy of the Saiyans, the fear of them. Like because he saw it's like these people keep getting stronger. Every generation they're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And they're telling me about this legendary Super Saiyan. And he kind of believed it.
Yeah.
And so him destroying Planet Vegeta to kind of put an end to that before it became a thing, I thought was a great thing to add to his story and like who he is. Right? It's like, hey, let me eliminate this threat before it happens. Before it becomes a problem. But then, when we learned that he was actually just taking orders.
Yeah.
We have to see where they're going to go with it. But as it stands right now, and we won't find out for some years anyway.
Yeah.
More than likely.
No, and that's why I think like Dragon Ball Z is the strongest part of the whole larger Dragon Ball universe, because it's just the characters go through real things and have real arcs. And by the time you get to Super, which I only watched, recently in the last year, Super's fun. It's cool, but it's kind of, it lacks the punch of Dragon Ball Z, because it's more the characters, they lean too heavily on their character tropes that they've developed over the years and sort of just very not as fully fleshed out as what they are in Dragon Ball Z.
Fascinating. I held off on watching Dragon Ball Super for a while.
Yeah.
Because of like I didn't want to do it with the filler. Because I do think Dragon Ball Z doesn't age the best for me.
Yeah. Well, do you know this? What I've heard the story behind that is? So you mentioned the filler. So like,
right? Because I would imagine, what was it? To catch up to the manga, right?
So for those looking to get into Dragon Ball Z, it's famous for having many episodes. There's hundreds of episodes in total, but there are many episodes where just like not a lot happens, and
powering up.
Just like I'm fighting you and just like rah, and then you go back up rah, and that's the whole episode of us just like getting power strong. So apparently the story is they got, like what happened with Game of Thrones, they got so far ahead of what was being written that they kind of just had to like pause and hold. And there's a sort of like, I forget like what it's called, but there's a re-edit of Dragon Ball Z where they cut out like dozens and dozens of episodes, all the filler episodes. So if you do decide to watch Dragon Ball Z, do some reading online to see like, which episodes are skippable and which ones, are they actually have the core story.
In today's world, I will fast forward through some shit. I do it with Demon Slayer all the time. Like, because Demon Slayer does a similar thing where they will have some filler within the episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can spot it. And I was like, I can fast forward through this. I never miss anything story-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, Bleach, they would have non-canon filler arcs, which was wild to me. But I always skipped all of those things. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Dragon Ball Super has some filler as well.
Right, but nowhere near as much. And I feel like pace-wise, it moves more smoothly.
Yeah.
And I do think that their villains are a bit more fleshed out. Like, they're just not villains. I will say, going back to Dragon Ball Z, my favorite saga and favorite villain was actually Kid Buu. And what I liked about Kid Buu, he was pure chaos.
Yeah.
Where it was an evil person that just wanted destruction. And I feel like it was so different from all the other villains that they had, where like Kid Buu, the first thing he does, spoiler, the first thing he does is destroy Earth.
Yeah.
It's like that's the first thing he does, right? I mean, my favorite part of all of DBZ is Majin Vegeta.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite fight is Goku and Vegeta during that. And even while he was tempting Goku to fight, like, because Goku was like, no, right? And then Vegeta just, with no mercy, killed a group of people when they were at the World Tournament, right? And Bulma having being in the audience and seeing him just wipe out a whole section of innocent people, and like the look on her face, like I felt that.
Yeah.
And the emotion behind that fight when he was fighting him and he was just like, you a clown, was the one who defeated Frieza. It was like, it was my birthright to do so. I'm the Prince of all Saints, and I had to watch you surpass me time after time.
And
after
this is
time.
why Z's the best part of Dragon Ball universe, because it's like it's these characters that head off against each other versus like once you get to Super, it's like it's very amorphous. They're fighting gods, and like the biggest god is basically like this floating ball of a child figure that can click his fingers and wipe out a universe. It's kind of silly in a way.
Yes.
But like when you have the arcs through, it's like the Saiyan arc is, it's about like them, they're meeting and fighting each other. Like Frieza is about like I'm bad because I want to conquer, but I try to live up to my dad's expectations. The Cell Saga is about like achieving perfection and like I'm the ultimate warrior, which is kind of like Goku wanted to be like that, but then Boo's just that evil.
Yes.
And so you kind of see this like escalation of villains of where it's like, oh, like all the others I can like kind of match and combat and go with, but like, how do I reason with the person that just wants chaos?
I almost forgot, like, my absolute favorite moment, probably, of all Dragon Ball Z, aside from the first time Goku turns Super Saiyan, is Vegeta sacrificing himself. I remember watching that and getting choked up. Like, that hit me harder than watching Krillin pass away, because it's like, and it seemed like he was always going to do that. And like that was And
I think that the other beautiful part is, like I said, of watching through the Buu saga finally now, but like read it all in detail, is that the way they defeat him is like Goku needs to get the energy from everyone else on Earth. So it's like that to me is like ultimate stakes. It's like they realize, oh, I can't defeat this person alone. I need everyone's help.
Right, and creates that giant spirit bomb.
Yeah.
One thing I do feel that Super does one of the things I feel that Super does much better than Dragon Ball Z was, or a wise decision that they made, was make Broly canon.
Yeah.
Right, and then giving him a deeper backstory. I really enjoyed that movie of his. And those fight scenes were just fucking insane. Yeah. But the Broly movies in the Dragon Ball Z series most of them were great. The last one, no. But when he's like some type of mud monster thingy or whatever the hell that was.
I've seen a couple of them. Just so I was watching at home. There's the TV series part, and then there are the Dragon Ball movies, and there's like 15 or so Dragon Ball movies, I think, at this point.
Like that, because there's Cooler, Metal Cooler, there's World's Strongest Man.
There's a few direct-to-video ones, and like some of the movies are canon and some of them are not. And it's very hard if you pick and choose what you watch. It's hard to like see what's what in there. But yeah, like Broly's a super cool character, and kind of shows like another side, like the Goku and Vegeta, they're like, oh wait, we've trained all our life, and this guy can just
right.
Yeah.
And who just gets stronger, like with the more enraged he gets.
Very Hulk-esque.
Yes. Right. I 100% agree. And I feel even more flushed out a bit when we in Super, when we see the tournament between dimensions, and one of the sayings, it turns out she has that
legendary Super Saiyan,
gene.
The green hair. And I mean, one of my favorite moments of all the post Dragon Ball stuff is it's one of the movies. I think it's the most recent movie where like the red ribbon army rises again. So like Goku and Vegeta are off-world training with Beerus and Whis, and there's a threat at home. It's basically like, the story of the movie is like bringing Gohan back in the fight. They create a new Supercell. Gohan fights, and so like all the real plot and action is happening on Earth, and they kind of Vegeta and Goku on the planet are kind of a side plot. But over that whole movie, like Vegeta and Goku are having just a sparring test, and they're not powering up, and like the rules of this training fight is like we're not going to power up, and then you kind of forget they're doing that. The movie ends, they defeat the villains on Earth, and then it cuts to like cuts to the credits, and like Goku and Vegeta been just sparring for like the whole length of the movie, like for months. And the point they're just like, have you seen this?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, they're like, ugh. They're trying to push each other, and then this last scene is like they're so exhausted and tired of fighting, and they just like tap each other, and they get the fists in each other's face, and Goku's the one that falls over, and Vegeta's like, I beat him, I beat him, I beat him. I finally defeated Kakarot.
What I love about, first off, I was super happy to see Gohan get back in the fight, and that was a Super Saiyan Beast. Yes, is what they call his. I mean, it's a cool looking form, but I like that all three have now achieved this level of Super Saiyan, right? With Goku's Super Saiyan instinct, with Vegeta, I forget what they call it.
So so Goku achieves Ultra Instinct in the Super series. And this is them as like just getting more and more levels of power. But the idea of Ultra Instinct is it's like perfect calm, and your body's just moving on instinct. It's like, the idea of like you've let go of everything and you just can fight and move and block on that. But Vegeta achieves ultimate ego, because Vegeta sees Goku achieve these things like, I'll catch up to you, Kakarot, I'll achieve it. They've achieved like Super Saiyan God mode, and then Vegeta achieves that as well, which is they've always like matched the same. This is the first time they achieve like different levels of new power.
Right.
And it's a cool thing that like instead of trying to let go of all these things, like if he embraces that's his true self.
Right, in true self. And that's the thing that when I talk to artists, I say, when I had to come to terms with is trusting my voice, leaning into who I am, and showing that to the world, showing the world through my lens, right? And seeing them, and now Dragon Ball Super now, how they are now coming into these forms and that lean into who they are, because Goku's always been the person that leaned into his instincts, right?
Yeah.
And then when we look at Vegeta, he's now, he's always been able to push himself because of his rage and his pride and having Goku there, right? And now with Gohan, Beast, I don't know where that comes from, but it looks cool. I'm not too sure.
It looks cool.
Right? Because I guess power, having so much power, because when they were in the hyperbolic time chamber, right? And Goku saw it in young Gohan, he was like, oh, my son's stronger than me.
Yeah.
And when they went into fighting Cell, he just wanted to fight Cell. He knew he couldn't defeat Cell. He knew their best chance of winning was his son. Yeah, right. And so like Gohan having like this beast within him that he had tamed, and the reason why he couldn't even get to that level of what he was as a kid is because he tamed the beast that was within him.
His true self.
His true self.
Yeah.
Right? Huh.
It's, it's cool.
The beauty of these conversations, it's like, oh shit, didn't even see it that way before.
Yeah, no, it's cool how they've like, let them grow to those potentials. And it's like there are moments where in the Super and latter bits where I'm like, oh, like this is still fucking cool, and like ties back into what I saw in Z and what I fell in love with. But it's kind of a crazy thing of storytelling when you've got hundreds of episodes over decades.
Yeah.
That you can still keep like weaving these things and finding new ways to tell a story, but also I think it's going back to the enduring popularity and why is it so popular. It's like, like in this movie which came out recently, like Gohan is the beast and the true self. Like that's going back to something they created. That's tying into something that happened years ago in terms of potential of that character has.
Dragon Ball Superhero. That's what it's called.
Yes, that's the movie. Yeah.
Right, yeah. But yeah, you're right. And what I hope for, and what it seems like, they will continue to do so. I admit, this new series they have, what's it when they're kids? Starts with D.
Daima.
Yeah.
That's clever.
Yeah.
I've only just started watching that, but it goes back to the issue I was talking about, where it's like when you are in a fantasy world and you keep leveling up power. At some point, you're like, I'm tapped into the power of creation. You're tapped into the power of creation. Where you can like fight each other and like wipe out creation or do nothing. So like how do you, from a storytelling point of view, how do you solve that problem? And so what happens in Daima is that the king of the demon world basically has a wish to turn them all back into kids. So they lose all their power, but they still have their character.
Right.
And so that makes it interesting. Then you go back and you can have like more simpler like problems and challenges that they kind of have to fight and work with.
In where it's the audience can identify with,
Yeah.
right? Because very few of us can identify as gods.
Yeah.
And so when you dial it back a bit, right? Because that's always been a problem also with Superman, because the biggest problem with Superman is too powerful.
Yeah.
And then so it's just like, okay, how do we make Superman more relatable? And I feel the best is him struggling with having virtually the power of a god.
Yeah.
To mere humans, right? And then, but with Dragon Ball and new things, like, okay, let's make them kids again as we figure this other stuff out. I know the manga is still going, and I've kind of looked online and see how far they've gone with things, and I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah.
And I know, well, not to get into what I hope for. What do you hope for from the Dragon Ball saga, Dragon Ball universe?
I'd love to more like focus on the kids in the next generation, like Goten's and Trunk. Like I think are cool and could do so much more with them. Yeah, kind of like to a bit more of like the passing of the torch kind of thing. Mm-hmm. If I could see more of that, that would like really interest me, because then you can show not only they like lower powered characters, but you can show more of a different world and arc for them. Like that'd be interesting.
Yeah, having to live up to the legacy before those who came before them.
Because I think what I've read in like synopsis online is that where the manga currently like ended is like Frieza came back again, achieved a new form called Frieza Black, and defeated both Goku and Vegeta in their like Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego modes, like with 2 hits kind of thing. And so it could be interesting what they do with that, but like that's a very tricky storytelling thing to pull off. Like, oh, we're bringing back the villain for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time, or like what new ways can they weevil that that are interesting versus like, oh, we defeat him again because we just got more angry and achieved new power level, versus like what character moments can be in there.
Right. All right. If different characters have to like defeat him, because what's Gohan's daughter name?
Pan.
I just thought about this. I don't recall Goten and Pan ever having a conversation together.
Yeah.
That's his niece.
Yeah.
That doesn't really cross my mind that Goten's an uncle.
Yeah, Goten's an uncle.
Yeah.
Even though he's this big.
Right. And we don't really, we hear more from Pan than we do Goten.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like that's a character they don't dive deep enough into. And I kind of get it because it's Goku and his son Gohan. Yeah. It's Vegeta and his son Trunks, but not the brother / uncle in the show. But I would love to see more interactions between Pan and Goten. I think that would be.
And it's where you could do something cool that like, as the Daima part shows, like, hey, there's characters in this world that have like magic. So you might be stronger than me, be able to outpunch me, but like, if I can cast a spell to throw you in the demon realm or whatever to get you out, like that could be a cool story. Like, oh, like Goku and Vegeta are trapped in another dimension, and the kids have to like figure out a way to save them.
Yes, that'd be cool. Just you have such a wide cast of characters that are powerful.
Yeah.
Like, why not show that even if you possibly have to do spin-off series? Because that's another thing too, right? There isn't a thing where it's like, okay, we have this series going, and then we have this other series that focus on these characters. Like, it's so big. I don't see why not do something like that. Like, really, like, truly explore this universe that you set. I am glad that there are certain characters that they kind of deal away with. I admit, I never was the biggest Yamcha fan.
Yeah.
You know, or I forget the three-eyed guy.
Tien,
Yeah.
and like there's Oolong, the pig character, and I feel like a lot of them are used as in the later like Super and all that. They're more used as the butt of jokes and gags, and
Right.
or they turn into characters of themselves. Like Yamcha's still like, yeah, I can take everyone on, even though he's a human, and he only he stopped being them a serious threat back in like Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball before Dragon Ball's it.
Right. I know one character they don't really show too much anymore is Mr. Popo.
Right.
I remember as a kid seeing that. And I know of my own history and everything. When Mr. Popo popped out, I was like, what the fuck is that, people? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And hearing people try to defend Mr. Popo is crazy.
Yeah.
And saying it's not this one thing. And I was like, no, people, it's so obviously this one thing. Fuck that character and fuck them for coming up.
For those who don't know, it's a blackface character.
Yeah.
It's a
who works in Kami's garden.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no excusing that.
Not at all. But for the fact that many people can overlook that thing because of everything else
going around.
Yeah, in that world is quite the achievement. And so, yeah, this is awesome. Hey, Michael, thank you for coming over.
Yeah, it's been great. It's I don't know, it's not too often I get to chat about something that was a big part of my childhood growing up, and I think it's not just anything the music you listen to and the things you watch when you're a teenager will stick with you, kind of regardless. But this one is not just stuck with me in a nostalgia sense. Like, I still love it and watch it, and like I said, I only watched Super like last year, and still go and see the movies when they come out, and it's a great anime.
Same. It's funny, people talk about this with music. Sometimes you can remember the first time you heard a track, and where you were in your life. And as we were talking, I was thinking about, like, as we talk about Super, hey, that's also recent for me, right? But thinking about some of those moments that we talked about, like, I remember where I was at, how old I was, and how it like sticks with me. So I say, hey, thank you to the Dragon Ball universe, the creators of it, and how y'all keep going with it into the incredible Dragon Ball community.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met a person who loved Dragon Ball that I didn't vibe with.
Yeah, so it's great. And
yeah.
it's great that it's an anime, and I'm so glad that anime exists, because it allows a more violent and adult aspects you don't necessarily get in like Western style anime of like the happy-go-lucky Mickey Mouse characters and all that sort of thing. And it's cool that we get to explore these stories.
Very, very true. Speaking of that, as we close out, I'll say one of these days I want to sit down and talk with somebody about Spawn.
Spawn.
That's quite the Western anime. Anyways, this is iFuxxsAnime, people. Thank you for watching, and catch you on the next one. Peace.